Dear students of level 2, hello and welcome. Today's lecture is going to cover 3 passages. 2 passages from the set book and a third external passage. The 3 of them are rich in vocabulary, well-constructed structures, and in translation we'll try to apply the rules of grammar, semantics, and stylistics we have learned in the last 3 lectures. The first passage is about an air crash, an accident, air crash. The air crash is translated into Arabic into حادث تحطم طائرة. And first I read out the passage. 5 hurt in Florence air crash. Florence, at least 5 people were injured, 1 critically, when a small airliner overshot a runway at the airport here yesterday and stopped just short of a busy road. The pilot of the France-based Air Littoral turboprop plane was in a coma in hospital. The names and nationalities of the 17 people on board were not immediately available. The plane was on a flight from Nice. This 2-paragraph passage conveys the news of the air crash which took place in Florence, in which 5 people were hurt, were injured, and 1 critically. We'll read the first paragraph. At least 5 people were injured, 1 critically, when a small airliner overshot a runway at the airport here yesterday and stopped just short of a busy road. This long sentence contains many details and subject, verb, and many adverbs of time and place. At least 5 people were injured. 1 critically, when a small airliner overshot a runway at the airport. You see here the use of when. This is a complex sentence. There is a main clause and subordinate clause. The main clause is at least 5 people were injured, 1 critically. The subordinate clause is when a small airliner overshot a runway at the airport here yesterday and stopped just short of a busy road. But before dealing with the structure, I'd like to focus first on the vocab given in the whole passage. Injured, you are familiar with this word from the media, where there is accidents and attacks on daily basis, where people are killed and injured. Injured means wounded. جرحوا. 1 critically. Critical injury means serious injury. Serious. The word serious is a synonym for critical. إصابة أحدهم خطيرة. Critical injury. Please look up the meanings and the other meanings and derivatives of the word critic, as it has a quite different meaning. It means the word critic and criticize means نقد and ينقد, and criticism the other word class and deals with another meaning of the word. So here critically means seriously. When a small airliner, طائرة ركاب مدنية صغيرة, overshot a runway. Overshot means اجتازت أو تجاوزت أو انحرفت. A runway ممر الهبوط. Runway at the airport here yesterday and stopped just short of a busy road. توقفت عند أو قبيل طريق مزدحم أو خاص بالسيارات. The second paragraph. The pilot of the France-based Air Littoral turboprop plane was in a coma in hospital. Pilot, قائد الطائرة. France-based Air Littoral. France-based هنا مقرها باريس، مقرها فرنسا. Air Littoral لشركة الطيران. turboprop plane الطائرة ذات المحركات التوربينية. كوما كوما اللي هي في غيبوبة. in hospital أدخل المستشفى أو نقل إلى المستشفى. this sentence again the vocab the pilot قائد الطائرة. France based شركة الطيران مقرها فرنسا. France based note that this is a hyphenated word. France based translated into Arabic والتي مقرها فرنسا. Air Littoral شركة خطوط طيران Air Littoral. Turbo Prop Plane الطائرة ذات المحركات التربونية. كوما غيبوبة. The names and nationalities of the 17 people on board were not immediately available. Nationalities جنسيات. On board على متن الطائرة. We always say on board the train, on board the plane بمعنى على متن الطائرة. The Arabic equivalent of on board is على متن. Were not immediately available لم تكن متاحة على الفور. هنشوف في السياق. The plane was on a flight from Nice. Flight دايما نلاحظ الكلمة ديت on in a ticket we ask about the flight number. رحلة بالطائرة. Flight from Nice. The vocab at least ما لا يقل. Injured. One critically. This is written in Arabic. Airliner. Overshot. ممر الهبوط. كادت أن تصل إلى stopped just short of. Busy road. طريق مزدحم. Pilot. France based. Turboprop مقرها فرنسا. Turboprop ذات محركات توربينية. France based مقرها في فرنسا. كوما غيبوبة. جنسيات nationalities. Now the translation of the passage for the title 5 hurt in Florence air crash. إصابة 5 أشخاص في تحطم طائرة في فلورنس. Florence, at least 5 people were injured, one critically, when a small airliner overshot runway at the airport here yesterday and stopped just short of a busy road. The constituents of this sentence must be well recognized and examined in order to come up with a correct translation and phrasing in Arabic. At least 5 people were injured. The verb here أصيب ما لا يقل عن 5 أشخاص. One critically إصابة أحدهم خطيرة. بعد كوما بعد فاصلة في العربي. When a small airliner overshot a runway عندما تجاوزت طائرة ركاب مدنية صغيرة ممر الهبوط بالمطار وقد توقفت قبيل طريق مزدحم. Again this sentence أصيب أمس ما لا يقل عن 5 أشخاص. إصابة أحدهم خطيرة عندما تجاوزت أو انحرفت بهم طائرة ركاب مدنية صغيرة عن ممر الهبوط في المطار وقد توقفت عند طريق مزدحم أو قبيل وصولها إلى طريق مزدحم. As you see the constituents of the sentence at least ما لا يقل عن 5 people were injured. This is a passive voice. أصيب دايما الستراكشر ده were injured بيبقى فيه were wounded were killed بيبقى دايما في passive voice. When a small airliner بعد دي في subordinate clause. A small airliner overshot a runway. The subject of this subordinate clause is the small airliner. طائرة ركاب مدنية صغيرة. The verb of this sentence is overshot in the past. A runway, the object. And the airport, this is an adverb of place. Here, also adverb of place. Yesterday, adverb of time. And stopped, another subject in the past. another verb in the past, just short of a busy road is adverb of place. This paragraph contains several adverbs of time and place. Please don't skip any of them in translation. The second paragraph: the pilot of the France-based Air Littoral turboprop plane was in a coma in hospital. The names and nationalities of the 17 people on board were not immediately available. The plane was on a flight from Nice. Here you see the structure of this sentence. The subject is the pilot was in a hospital. This makes a complete sentence, but the subject has associates. What are they? The pilot of the France-based Air Littoral turboplane. All these details are related and associated with the subject. So you got to include all these details with the subject. قائد الطائرة ذات المحركات التربونية التابعة لشركة طيران اير ليتورال والتي مقرها فرنسا. We got to hear we got to have this structure, France-based turboprop plane, in Arabic, in the structure in the target language this way. وأدخل على أثرها قائد الطائرة ذات المحركات التربونية والتابعة لشركة خطوط طيران اير ليتورال والتي مقرها فرنسا إلى المستشفى في حالة غيبوبة. Then here you got to be aware of the constituents of this sentence. The pilot, the subject is the subject, and the associates of the subject. 3-1 France-based Air Littoral turboplane. 3 details given about the subject. We call them associates of the subject. To be translated thus: وأدخل أو نقل على أثرها قائد إثرها. By the way, إثرها عقبها يعني إثر. ونقل أو أدخل قائد الطائرة ذات المحركات التربونية والتابعة لشركة طيران اير ليتورال والتي مقرها فرنسا إلى المستشفى في حالة غيبوبة. This way you see the phrasing of Arabic. الخبر بيتنقل ازاي. هنا ما ننساش حاجة عن الديتيلز بتاعة الخبر. The second sentence in this paragraph: the plane was on a flight from Nice. Before this, the names and nationalities of the 17 people on board were not immediately available. The main verb here, were not immediately, were not, it's in negative. تترجم, it's translated into Arabic: لم تكن ولم تكن أسماء ولا جنسيات 17 شخصا. طبعا النمبر 17 شخص مكتوبة النمبر الذين كانوا على متن الطائرة متاحة على الفور. متاحة على الفور. كلمة immediately is translated into على الفور. على الفور. The names and nationalities of the 17 people on board were not immediately available. The plane was on a flight from Nice. وكانت الطائرة في أحد رحلاتها من مدينة نيس. نقدر هنا نشوف كده يبقى ال structure and vocabulary covered in this passage. The second passage in today's lecture is passage number 6 in the said book. England tops the table of crime victims. A survey, sort of a survey included in this passage. I'll read out the passage first. England tops table of crime victims. People in England and Wales are more likely to be the victims of a crime than those in the United States, according to an immediate survey of 11 industrialized countries. The risk of robbery, violent assault, or sexual assault is said to be as high as in America. The 1996 International Crime Survey, coordinated by the Dutch Justice Ministry, asked 19,000 people in the 11 countries about their experience of crime in 1995, whether or not those crimes had been reported to the police. The conclusion was that people in England and Wales were the most likely to be the victims of a crime. England and Wales had the highest number of homes to have suffered burglary or attempted burglary, and for thefts of and from cars. 1 in 10 respondents in England and Wales felt they were very likely to be burgled in the coming year, although if the survey is correct, the odds are about 1 in 16. As you see, the passage deals with a survey about the crime rate and crime victims in both England and Wales. The vocab: England tops. Here, top is not is not a noun or adjective, but a verb, and it's with third person s. England tops means تأتي على قائمة أو تتصدر as a verb. Table of crime victims، قائمة أو جدول ضحايا الجريمة. Victims، الضحايا. People in England and Wales are more likely to be the victims of a crime than those in the United States, according to an immediate survey of 11 industrialized countries. The use of the comparative more likely على الأرجح أو أكثر احتمالا أكثر عرضة. You got to translate the comparative and superlative adjectives in the same way in Arabic. مقارنة, comparative or superlative must be translated in Arabic with the same mood. For example, if we say Saudi Arabia is the second largest oil country in the world or first largest oil country, oil exporter, then هنا نقول the largest الأكبر أو أولى الدول المصدرة للبترول. لو قلنا هنا more likely، هنا الأكثر لازم نستخدم أكثر احتمالا أو أكثر عرضة. According to an immediate survey of 11 industrial countries, this is the reporting كما جاء أو طبقا للتقرير الفوري الذي تم في 11 دولة صناعية in this industrialized. The risk of robbery، risk مخاطرة of robbery السرقة، violent assault الاعتداء المتسم بالعنف، or sexual assault كلمة assault الاعتداء، is said to be as high as in America بنفس معدلاتها في أمريكا. The 1996 International Crime Survey استقصاء الجريمة الدولي في العام 1996 coordinated كلمة coordinated الذي تولى تنسيقه يقوم بتنسيقه the Dutch Justice Ministry وزارة العدل الهولندية asked 19,000 people in the 11 countries about their experience of crime in 1995. Their experience تجربتهم خبرتهم عن الجريمة أو عن موضوع الجريمة أو في عام 95 تعني العام الذي سبق الاستقصاء. Whether or not those crimes had been reported to the police. Whether or not ما إذا كان. The conclusion was that هنا خاتمة أو هنا خلص الاستقصاء انتهى إلى the findings بمعنى كلمة findings نتائج. The conclusion was that people in England and Wales were the most likely to be the victims of a crime. This is the conclusion of the survey. England and Wales had the highest number of homes. Here the superlative adjective highest number معنى أعلى، ما أقدرش أقول معدل عالي أو معدل أعلى من. ده اللي أنا أقصده بترجمة superlative adjectives أو comparative adjectives. larger than, cheaper than, bigger than، لازم نقول أكبر من، أرخص من، وهكذا، أفضل من، better than. but the best, the highest, the best, the highest, the largest, the biggest، هنا تعني الصفة المطلقة superlative adjective، ونترجمها بنفس الشكل، أعلى وأقوى وهكذا، أو أفضل. to have suffered a burglary or attempted burglary. attempted burglary محاولة السرقة. attempted burglary. attempted murder محاولة القتل. attempted burglary. and for thefts, see the noun burglary is different from thefts. burglary السطو على المنازل، ولكن thefts السرقة بمعناها العام. thefts of and from cars. 1 in 10 respondents. the word respondents has the Arabic equivalence، الذين شاركوا في الاستقصاء، الذين قاموا بالرد على الأسئلة. felt they were very likely، رأوا، هنا شعروا به، هنا feeling هنا بمعنى الرؤية، يعتقدوا أن felt they were very likely to be burgled in the coming year. although if the survey is correct the odds are about 1 in 16. في حالة إذا صح هذا الاستقصاء فسيكون الاحتمالات، odds هنا الاحتمالات بمعنى الاحتمالات. and please look up the meaning of the word odd in a good dictionary. odd لها استخدامات كثيرة. odd numbers، even numbers. even numbers تعني بها الأرقام المزدوجة. odd numbers الأرقام الفردية. is odd معنى weird, strange، لها معاني أخرى كتير. فالفوكاب هنلاقيها تاني أكتر مكتوب باللغة العربية قدامنا. more likely الأرجح أو الأكثر. مسح استقصاء لو survey. risk. violent assault. international crime victims الاستقصاء الدولي لضحايا الجريمة. you got to have it all together. international crime victim survey الاستقصاء الدولي لضحايا الجريمة. it can't be translated otherwise. see مش هنقولها بأي ترتيب آخر. الجريمة الدولية، الاستقصاء whatever، غلط. لازم كده نجيب الناون الأول بتاعنا الأساسي الهيد of this structure، الاستقصاء الدولي لضحايا الجريمة. Dutch هولندي reported to attempted theft felt that victims in this industrialized robbery, sexual assault coordinated by experience. And please look up the word experience in an English dictionary, and the word class, to experiment with life, experience, expertise, expert, many useful word class for this word. Conclusion: burglary, respondents, the odds are. Now the translation: England tops table of crime victims. انجلترا تتصدر قائمة ضحايا الجريمة. People in England and Wales are more likely to be the victims of a crime than those in the United States, according to an immediate survey of 11 industrialized countries. أظهر استقصاء دولي أجري في 11 دولة صناعية أن الناس في كل من إنجلترا وويلز هم الأكثر عرضة لأن يقعوا ضحايا الجرائم من هؤلاء في الولايات المتحدة أو منهم في الولايات المتحدة. نلاحظ هنا في الترجمة An immediate survey of 11 industrialized countries. This comes first. According to an immediate survey of 11 industrialized countries طبقا لي وكما ورد في أو أظهر أو أوضح. These are correct words equivalents for according to. كما أوضح الاستقصاء الذي أجري لتوه في 11 دولة صناعية أن الناس في كل من إنجلترا وويلز هم أكثر احتمالا لأن يتعرضوا أو أكثر عرضة لأن يقعوا ضحايا الجريمة من هؤلاء في الولايات المتحدة. خلاص هيبقى الجزء الأخير في الجملة هيبقى الجاب في الأول زي بالظبط as we got used to translation in political issues. A government official said, foreign minister said, hospital sources said, and so on. بنجيب الريبورتينج الأول وبعدين نجيب الخبر. The second sentence, the risk of robbery, violent assault or sexual assault is said to be as high as in America. ويذكر أو ذكر التقرير أن مخاطر you can have it in plural. The risk of robbery مخاطر السرقة والاعتداء المتسم بالعنف والاعتداء الجنسي تسير بنفس معدلاتها في الولايات المتحدة وفي أمريكا. is as high as. Today the focus in this passage is on the translation of adjectives. Adjectives as high as بنفس معدلاتها بنفس المعدلات المرتفعة. شفنا ازاي higher than شفنا the هنا highest rates the biggest the largest. نركز على ترجمة الصفات في انها بتكون بتاخد نفس الفورمات نفس الشكل. وذكر الاستقصاء أن مخاطر السرقة والاعتداء المتسم بالعنف ونلاحظ هنا المتسم بالعنف violent نحاول دايما نترجم violent مش عنيف. الاعتداء العنيف هتدي كده in Arabic sounds awkward لكن المتسم بالعنف هنا استخدام العنف violence use violence استخدام العنف. المتسم بالعنف نحاول نجيب دايما الادجكتيف اللي هي مستخدمة في اللغة العربية. مخاطر السرقة والاعتداء المتسم بالعنف والاعتداء الجنسي تسير بنفس معدلاتها المرتفعة في أمريكا. as high as. The third sentence the 1996 International Crime Survey coordinated by the Dutch Justice Ministry asked 19,000 people in the 11 countries about their experience of crime in 1995. Whether or not those crimes had been reported to the police, the conclusion was that people in England and Wales were the most likely to be the victims of a crime. The verb here in this sentence بسؤال 19,000 شخص أو عينة قوامها حسب الاستقصاء ولغة الإحصاء. بسؤال عينة قوامها 19,000 شخص في 11 دولة عن تجربتهم أو خبراتهم أو فكرتهم عن عالم الجريمة في عام 1995 وما إذا كانوا تلك الجرائم التي علموا بها قد أبلغت إلى الشرطة. وأجرى هذا الاستفتاء الجريمة الدولي والذي تنسقه وزارة العدل الهولندية. وزارة العدل الهولندية أجرى هذا الاستفتاء. وزارة العدل اللي هو الاستقصاء، وزارة العدل الهولندية، سيرفي الاستقصاء. نشوف بقى الترجمة in Arabic. وقد طرح الاستقصاء الدولي لضحايا الجريمة عن عام 1996 والذي يتولى تنسيقه وزارة العدل الهولندية أسئلة على عينة قوامها 19,000 شخص في 11 دولة عن تجاربهم في الجريمة لعام 1995 وعما إذا كانت هذه الجرائم قد أبلغت إلى الشرطة، وكانت المحصلة أن الناس في كل من إنجلترا وويلز وهولندا هم الأكثر احتمالا أن يكونوا ضحايا الجرائم. This last part of this passage, England and Wales had the highest number of homes to have suffered a burglary or attempted burglary, and for thefts of and from cars. 1 in 10 respondents in England and Wales felt they were very likely to be burgled in the coming year, although if the survey is correct, the odds are about 1 in 16. Two sentences. وهنا had the highest number of homes to have suffered the burglary or attempted burglary. سجلت كل من إنجلترا وويلز أعلى معدل. احنا شفنا as high as، شفنا higher than أو نعرفها. هنا the highest number. يبقى ترجمة النهاردة تركيز على ترجمة إيه؟ الصفات adjectives comparative superlative adjectives. In particular, England and Wales had the highest number of homes to have suffered a burglary or attempted burglary. had here ممكن نقول كانت حصلت، مش هنقول طبعا احسن الحاجه ليها، سجلت انجلترا وويلز اعلى معدل او في اعلى رقم لسرقات في سرقات المنازل او محاوله سرقات المنازل، وكذلك سرقات السيارات ومحتوياتها. محتوى السيارات ومحتوياتها جت ازاي؟ and for thefts of cars and from cars. The thefts from cars mean the contents of the cars, so be translated into محتويات السيارات. again سجلت كل من انجلترا وويلز اعلى الارقام او اعلى المعدلات في سرقات المنازل ومحاولة سرقاتها، وكذلك سرقة السيارات ومحتوياتها. 1 in 10 respondents in England and Wales felt they were very likely to be burgled in the coming year, although if the survey is correct, the odds are about 1 in 16. وقد رأى أن 1 من كل 10 أشخاص ممن أجابوا على الأسئلة أو المشاركين في هذا الاستطلاع في انجلترا وويلز انهم معرضون جدا الى احتمال سرقة منازلهم في العام المقبل، على الرغم ان انه اذا صح هذا الاستقصاء فان الاحتمالات يكون شخص في كل 16 شخص. as it's a survey, 1 in 10 respondents in England and Wales felt they were very likely to be burgled in the coming year. Here again, the verb felt in the past from feel is translated not means شعروا but means رأوا أو هنا يرى بمعنى إنه هم يعتقدوا أو يعتقد. Now we move to the remaining part of this lecture. We'll go for 2 passages dealing with legal issues. The first is FBI agent admits spy charges. Charges, as we know from the last lectures, means اتهامات أو تهم. spy means يتجسس, the noun of which is espionage, charges of espionage or conspiracy to spy. The words conspiracy and espionage are keywords in the first passage. First I read the passage and then move on to the vocab and structure and phrasing of the passage as we used to do. FBI agent admits spy charges. Virginia Robert Hansen, 57, a former FBI agent, admitted 15 charges of espionage and conspiracy to spy for Russia as part of a plea bargain to avoid the death penalty. Hansen's lawyer told district judge that Hansen spied intermittently since 1990, but took several breaks, and that he was not a person who spied constantly for a long time. The plea bargain calls for a life prison sentence for Hansen and would mean that his family will keep their home. The first paragraph of this passage: FBI agent admits spy charges. The title: FBI agent admits spy charges. Virginia Robert Hansen, 57, a former FBI agent, admitted 15 charges of espionage. FBI مكتب التحقيقات الفيدرالي الأمريكي. agent عميل admitted اعترف به أو أقر به charges of espionage اتهامات بالتجسس أو تهم بالتجسس and conspiracy to spy والتآمر من أجل التجسس for Russia as part of a plea bargain اتفاقية بمعنى لتخفيف الحكم الصادر ضده to avoid the death penalty. avoid means يتجنب ليتجنب أو لتجنب the death penalty حكم الإعدام. Hansen's lawyer محامي هانسن the defendant told district judge قاضي الحي that Hansen spied intermittently. Spied, the past of spy, intermittently بشكل متقطع, the opposite of which will be given later in the passage: constantly, continuously, intermittently, since 1990, but took, past of take, took several breaks, فترات راحة, breathing spaces, and that he was not a person who spied constantly. This is the opposite of intermittently. Constantly and intermittently, both words function as adverbs. Adverbs describe the verbs, the action. For a long time, the plea bargain, اتفاق مقابل تخفيف الحكم, calls for a life prison sentence. تقضي به, تتطلب life prison sentence, سجن مدى الحياة, and would mean that his family will keep their home. كما تعني أيضا أن تحتفظ أسرته بالمنزل بملكية منزلهم. The translation of the passage after dealing with the terminology again: FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, the acronym of Federal Bureau of Investigation, translated into Arabic مكتب التحقيقات الفيدرالي. In this, the initials of Federal Bureau Investigation make FBI. There is also an important organization body for intelligence in the United States, that's of CIA, Central Intelligence Agency. CIA, Central Intelligence Agency. Agent, death penalty, espionage, conspiracy to spy, several breaks, intermittently, pleaded guilty. This is the question. Pleaded guilty, اعترف بالتهمة الموجهة إليه. The question usually addressed to the defendant: how do you plead? How do you plead? ما قولك في التهمة المنسوبة إليك. Pleaded guilty, اعترف بالتهمة. Or pleaded not guilty. ما نقولش pleaded innocent. Pleaded guilty or pleaded not guilty. So the question is, how do you plead? A plea bargain, اعتراف مقابل تخفيف الحكم. This is legal terminology. Legal terminology. Lenient treatment in recognition of less criticism or strong punishments. The word explained in English. Lenient treatment, تعامل سهل أو أقل حدة، متساهل. In recognition of، اعترافا ب، of less criticism، نقد أقل، or strong punishments، عقوبة أقوى. FBI agent admits spy charges. So here عميل ال FBI يقر ب، يعترف باتهامات الجاسوسية أو التجسس. Admits because it's third person singular agent. Robert Hansen, 57, a former FBI agent, admitted 15 charges of espionage and conspiracy to spy for Russia as part of a plea bargain to avoid the death penalty. The translation of this sentence, after covering the vocabulary included in it and the whole passage, in translation into Arabic, we need to begin this sentence with the verb. Admitted here is the main verb of the sentence. The subject is Robert Hansen, 57, a former FBI agent. Just as we did with the passage of the pilot, the air crash, the subject has associates. You remember the subject of the air crash passage, the pilot, and all about the plane. Now in this passage, which has legal issue or is concerned with the legal issue, Robert Hansen, the defendant, is 57 years old and a former FBI agent. Such details about the subject have to be included in translation. The main admitted is admitted and it's in the past. You don't change the tense of the verb. The tense is in the past. Admitted أقر أو اعترف روبرت هانسن البالغ من العمر 57 عاما وعميل ال FBI السابق أو الأسبق بالتهم الموجهة إليه في بخصوص التجسس والتآمر للتجسس لصالح روسيا. Again, this sentence: اعترف روبرت هانسن البالغ من العمر 57 عاما وعميل المخابرات الأسبق ب 15 تهمة موجهة إليه بخصوص أو تتعلق بالتجسس والتآمر للتجسس لصالح روسيا أو لحساب روسيا كجزء من اتفاق لتخفيف الحكم والذي يجنبه عقوبة الإعدام as part of a plea bargain to avoid the death penalty. This is a sentence complement. So again, the subject of the sentence, Robert Hansen, 57, a former FBI agent, the subject. The verb is admitted. The object is 15 charges of espionage and conspiracy to spy for Russia. Sentence complement as part of a plea bargain to avoid the death penalty. Your awareness of the constituents or parts of the sentence will enable you to come up with a better translation and a well-constructed phrasing of the passage. Hansen's lawyer told district judge that Hansen spied intermittently since 1990 but took several breaks, and that he was not a person who spied constantly for a long time. وقد أخبر محامي هانسن قاضي الحي أن موكله هانسن spied intermittently كان يقوم بالتجسس بصورة متقطعة. We can here translate the adverb intermittently بصورة متقطعة just as we translate quickly على نحو السرعة. We translate accurately على وجه الدقة. Intermittently and constantly are adverbs. Constantly بصورة دائمة, intermittently بصورة متقطعة. Since 1999 but took several breaks, and that he was not a person who spied constantly for a long time. وقد أخبر محامي هانسن قاضي الحي أن موكله كان يتجسس أو يقوم بالتجسس بصورة متقطعة منذ عام 1990 ولكنه كان يأخذ فترات للراحة وأن موكله أو أضاف أن موكله لم يكن من هذا النوع من الأشخاص الذي يقوم بالتجسس بصورة دائمة لوقت طويل. That he was not a person who spied constantly for a long time. The plea bargain, this is a legal term, تعني زي ما قلنا اتفاق مقابل تخفيف الحكم. The plea bargain calls for a life prison sentence for Hansen and would mean that his family will keep their home. An important legal term is sentence. Sentence means الحكم أو فترة العقوبة. Sentenced he's sentenced to 5 years in prison. صدر الحكم عليه بالسجن 5 سنوات أو بعقوبة السجن 5 سنوات. The plea bargain calls for a life prison sentence for Hansen and would mean that his family will keep their home. وتتطلب أو يتطلب هذا الاتفاق لتخفيف الحكم إلى السجن مدى الحياة، ويعني أيضا أن تحتفظ أسرة هانسن بملكية منزلهم. The phrasal verb called for تستلزم تقتضي وليس تنادي بي أو يطالب بي. This is in political issue نستخدمها يطالب بي يدعو إلى، ولكن هنا تستلزم تتطلب تقضي تخفيف الحكم من الإعدام إلى السجن مدى الحياة. life imprisonment أو life prison sentence حكم بالسجن مدى الحياة. The last passage in today's lecture is one from the said book. Job threat lifted. A short one. The immediate threat of 250 redundancy at the Faslane Royal Base on the Clyde was lifted, with trade unions being given 3-month breathing space to try to effect efficiency savings without the job losses. Again, job threat lifted. Job threat lifted. 3 lexical or content words should be translated in 3 content words in Arabic. The title should be very short. job threat lifted. زال الخطر بالفصل من العمل. job threat lifted. The verb lift means زال أو رفع. lift a ban, lift an embargo, lift a curfew, the opposite of which in these cases or in these examples is impose. Impose, to impose a curfew, impose a ceasefire, impose a ban. Lift is the opposite of impose. I'm going to write down these words later. The immediate threat of 250 redundancies at the Faslane Royal Base on the Clyde was lifted, with trade unions being given 3-month breathing space to try to effect efficiency savings without the job losses. Immediate threat, الخطر الفوري of 250 redundancies. Redundancies means تسريح العمال أو فصل العمال. The workers are made redundant بمعنى ان هم بمعنى ان هم laid off, سرحوا. At the Faslane Royal Base on the Clyde was lifted, the main verb زال أو رفع, with trade unions معناها اتحاد العمال being given 3-month breathing space. breathing space فرصة لالتقاط الأنفاس أو فترة راحة أو التقاط الأنفاس to try to effect efficiency savings لتحقيق وفرات في الإنتاج without the job losses بدون مخاطر فقدان الفصل من أو الفصل من العمل. vocabulary threat تهديد أو خطر. redundancies فصل العمال. on the Clyde is river على نهر كلايد. trade unions النقابات. efficiency savings effect to effect efficiency savings تحقيق وفرات عن طريق زيادة كفاءة الأداء. immediate naval base was lifted, breathing space, job losses. The translation of the passage with the verb زال أو رفع الخطر المحقق بتسريح 250 عاملا في قاعدة فسلان الملكية البحرية الواقعة على نهر كلاين بعد إعطاء النقابات مهلة 3 أشهر لتحقيق فائض عن طريق زيادة كفاءة الأداء يمكنها من عدم إلغاء الوظائف أو لتجنب خطر إلغاء الوظائف. نلاحظ هنا البداية بالverb. وهنا with this passage we come to the end of our lecture. Thank you very much and goodbye.